What's going on, everybody? So real quick, we got 15 minutes to power through the second half of this, and there's quite a bit to cover, so I'm going to be moving a little quicker, okay? Obviously, read the text if you need to. That link is available. Okay, so on page 60, down here at the bottom, you can see page 60, promoting health of your community. All right, so community depends on the actions of businesses, organizations, and each individual in the community. This means you can promote the health of your community in meaningful ways. Okay, so community resources, they define that as organizations and programs that help the environment and promote people within a community. Your resources, that's the stuff that is available to you to make you better, to make you healthier, etc. All right? Schools, that's the first one they list. Schools are a great resource, helps improve the education of the system as a whole. I talked about the importance of that yesterday. Very important. Within those schools, you have a nurse, you have a counselor. Nurse can obviously help you take care of you when you're sick, especially if you're at school. And the counselor can find you, they might be able to offer you something at the school level, or if you're, struggling with mental health, things like that, they can steer you in the right direction. They know where to send you. If you're dealing with, let's say, any form of abuse, they can get you the help that you need. And they can also help you graduate on time, things like that, set up your schedule. Counselors are fantastic. Okay. Community centers, they offer workshops about nutrition, physical activity, stress, other stuff for improving your own skills. That stuff can look great on a job application. So if you're applying for something, community centers are great. Spend your time doing that, and it looks really good. Shelters, obviously, if you're homeless, not everyone's dealt a great hand. And even if you're not homeless, but you need a little something to get you by, those shelters can provide a great deal of stress relief for people and improve their quality of life. Children that have been abused, they need a place to go. Okay, obviously they can't stay at home. Shelters are fantastic. Food pantries, basically people that are doing okay, they have a little extra to give. They can give food to these food pantries. Somebody that's struggling comes in. Here you go. Here's a little bit of food. They divvy it out to the community. That's wonderful. City and healthcare facilities, it's kind of like the food pantry, but for healthcare, it's just discounted rates. Obviously, you want people, if you're people that don't have a lot of money in your community and they're struggling, if they're getting sick, that can spread to everybody else, okay? So you got to find a way to help those people get a little bit of care too, otherwise it's going to affect everybody. You can't just not worry about, the people in your community that, might not have a good hand. They're kind of out of sight, out of mind in a lot of ways sometimes if you don't see those people. But you need to, think about a little outside the box and why it's important for them to get help too. Older adult services, youth services, physical and mental health, those are great. It's kind of like could include the schools, counselors and nurses, but there's other forms of youth services out there. Crisis hotline, obviously. A lot of ways it's like 911, okay? And you have all these other numbers up here on the left side that you guys can read through. Different types of crisis hotlines. Those are fantastic. All right, down here, community service and volunteering, that's huge, okay? It's not just picking up trash. It could be anything. You can base it around your interests. We'll talk about that in a second. Community service is great. Not only does it clean up your community, make it better, it sets an example for other people. It might start out as just you, but you might get friends to come out there with you. It looks fantastic on a job application. There's a lot of times there's places for community service on job applications, college applications. Find somewhere to do community service. If you're spending time to help your community and using your free time to do that, jobs love it because you're becoming part of their community. And I actually hired people myself in some situations when I worked at college, and those were things that we really focused on. Who's getting involved in other things that make their environment better, okay? Find some community service. That's great. Next page. So I talked about that. You can find, this basically talks about finding things that you like to do for community service. How can you ask yourself questions to decide what kind of community service to do? It doesn't have to be picking up trash. It could be volunteering at a sport event, or whatever you're into. Maybe you're into martial arts, you're into art or crafts. There's people out there looking for help that will teach you a little bit about what they do, if you're willing to work for free. So it's not, you're not always working it's not always walking away from nothing with these things, okay? Sometimes you're walking away with knowledge, and knowledge can be expensive. Go to college, you got to pay for classes, okay? This is free education. So you'll learn later that education is not free in a lot of ways like this can be, okay? So ways you can help. These are different ways you can help teens, older adults, low-income families, people who are homeless. Okay, if you want to give that a read right there. Consider organ donation. Organ donation's huge. If you had health at Conner High School, you've had Gina probably come in as a freshman, and she talks about the myths of organ donation. It's great. It saves lives. Doesn't really take much away from you. If you don't need them, you don't need them, right? So I'm an organ donor. I, kind of weighed the evidence. I did think it was weird at first. My parents never really cared for it, but after learning about it and whatnot, I did decide I think it was best to be an organ donor. You can save a lot of lives. Read about that right here. If you want to sign up to be an organ donor or you want information, go to organdonor.gov for that information. Use your collaborative decision making you learned about the other day. Talk with your family. I'm not pushing it on you by any means. Talk it over with them, and you guys can make the best decision for you and your family. But organ donation can be a really great thing, okay? And that is the acts of allowing your organs to be donated and transplanted into another person, typically upon your death, okay? Environmental justice, that is the aspect of community and world health concerned with populations exposed to harmful environmental and societal factors through no fault of their own, okay? So basically, let's say you got your house, you're trying to enjoy your backyard, and your neighbor is burning piles of trash and old tires and paint cans and that stuff, that fumes and all that horrible stuff you're not supposed to be breathing is blowing into your yard. You're doing everything right. They're not, okay? So environmental justice, make sure that everybody is playing their fair part in taking care of the environment and it's not affecting other people. It's kind of like in China, there's not a lot of environmental justice. A lot of those factories and stuff are pumping out fumes that they shouldn't be. That's affecting other people, and they're not. And that's why environmental justice, typically in America at least, will go in and they will set rules and regulations of what can be dumped into the water, what can be put into the air, things like that, because it affects other people, not just that business. Obviously, businesses might do that to save some money. Instead of paying for dumping space, we'll just dump it into the ocean. Okay. Of course, they're going to save money. It's the free dumping ground, but they can't do that. It's illegal. Okay. These are some of the stuff. If you read here, if you open the text, if you can see that right there, I'll try to make it bigger. Some of the things that they are concerned with. Some of these little bullets right here. The EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, that's a big one. Probably the most popular one that is, involved in environmental justice in America. Okay, next page. Public health is a science-based approach to protecting and improving the health of populations as a whole. All right, so public health goals. Obviously, the government's going to set these. They're going to use scientists. Leaders are going to get together to try to figure out what's best to promote a healthy community. So they'll set up goals, usually every several years, and they'll kind of set that out, kind of like a SMART goal thing that we would do. You're going to have big councils coming together to make those collaborative decisions on what we want to focus on for our people and how to make our communities stronger. Okay, so health organizations, if you scroll down to here, the department, most cities and councils have a department of health. They're going to be concerned for that area. Obviously, they're going to have their own little jurisdiction. Every city should have a department of health in some way to monitor the businesses and things going on in the area to make sure they're doing the right thing. Food, all right. Anytime you eat at a restaurant, they usually have that thing on the window with a number out of 100. That's what they scored, okay? If you go to somewhere and they have a 71C, you got to decide whether you really want to eat at that place. Why did they score a 71C on their health report, okay? Are they, is their machine up to date? Are they cleaning stuff the way they should? You can get sick. You can be eating something really gross there. Go to restaurants that have higher scores, okay? So that's some of the stuff that they do from the Department of Health on local bases, okay? The world community, so this is a big deal right now. The World Health Organization, I think President Trump kind of wanted to pull out some funding from them this year, and that was a big controversy. because a lot of people disagreed with it. I don't care necessarily about the politics, but traditionally, World Health Organization kind of they monitor all the countries and what they're doing and try to make sure that they're doing the right thing, and they're giving them suggestions on how things should be done to make sure that us or Russia or China isn't dumping stuff into the water. It's just an agreement that the countries have had to make sure that we're all following our rules, that we're all neighbors in some form or fashion. Okay, so that's what the World Health Organization does. They also try to come up with ways to prevent things like the pandemic from spreading. Super important stuff. So that is the World Health Organization. That is WHO. Okay. Sorry, I'm losing my cursor here. Some other stuff they do talk about, relations between climate, war, trade practices, national economics, poverty, and cultural practices. So war, that could be, as unfair as war you think would be. There is some guidelines to war, such as like chemical warfare and things like that, and they have a hand in that to make sure that everybody is following their part with that as well. Federal health organizations. You've probably heard a lot of these lately. This is the last page here, and I got a couple minutes to talk about it. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, that is huge. Another thing that Trump has kind of been, in a little fight with lately. All politics, but for the most part, and traditionally, CDC has been the gold standard of where you should get your information. Okay, and with COVID, they've gotten this bad name in a little bit of a ways just because everybody is so distrusting of each other right now, I think. But the CDC is there for the people, no matter what. I don't believe that, they have any ill intent involved. But the CDC, they try to find what, if you get poisoned, okay, you can call the CDC and they can tell you the steps to go through to try to save your life, okay? They're going to come out with statistics the best that they can to decide what the best thing to do with COVID is, whatever. A report came out this week that only 6% of the deaths from COVID didn't have any other underlying conditions, which I still think is a pretty high number. I know that originally we pretty much assumed that people that were dying from COVID already had asthma and underlying conditions and things like that. So that came out, and there's been a debacle on how that information's been interpreted. But overall, I think that's good information. I look at it, and I still think it's pretty alarming. But people hate wearing masks, and they hate sports not going right now. So I think they discredit what it could really mean. Department of Health and Human Services, Environmental Protection Agency, okay? We just talked about those. FDA, they make sure that products that get put out on shelves that people are trying to sell you to eat or consume, they make sure that stuff is safe. Medications too, different types of treatments. National Institute for Mental Health, OSHA. So what OSHA is, Occupational Safety and Health Administration. Occupational is like work. So OSHA might come into a business and they're looking around and there's black mold everywhere, which can cause horrible respiratory disease and maybe forms of cancer as well. They could go in there and look around and be like, you cannot make your employees work in this. This is an unfair work environment. You guys have to clean up this black mold or do something about it. They go in and they make sure that you don't have, construction workers getting on top of a crane without a harness and safety gear, ear protection, things like that. They make sure if they go to a place where there's like grain machines and things like that people are following practices right so they don't get their clothing caught in an auger or something like that. All right, that is OSHA. United Network for Organ Sharing, U.S. Department of Agriculture. They regulate food quality. Guidelines for people across the lifespan, protects the health of crops, plants, and livestock. So they come out with information on how to take care of livestock, make sure people aren't feeding them the wrong things, because when you eat livestock, that stuff that the livestock had essentially goes into your body too. Okay, so if you have any questions, hit me up as always. Please submit today's assignment under part 2. Please submit yesterday's work and today's work under part 2.